Okay. Good morning, everyone. As you can see, we are at the Royal Enfield dealership down in Kuta, or near to Kuta, near to the airport in Bali. I have just had a brand new instrument cluster installed. As you can see, it's now sort of like a brand new bike. I have 1 kilometer on the clock. My old instrument cluster died because of heavy rain, and that is sort of like a known issue with this bike. Unfortunately, I had to just get a new one. So we've had one shipped from India. Took a few weeks to arrive. And now I have a quote-unquote new bike. 1 kilometer on the clock. How lovely. All right, now it's mission get back home. All right, we're gonna have to go for it. Mission get back home before it starts to rain. So we are just after rush hour. It's about 10 a.m. and the traffic is starting to lighten up. Oh, it's so nice to have a fuel gauge again. The old instrument cluster got waterlogged, and I mean, basically the whole thing just died. So I didn't have a speedo, I didn't have my rev counter, but crucially, I did not have a fuel gauge. So for the last few weeks, I've been doing a lot of shaking my tank around to see how much fuel I've got. And normally that would not be an issue on a lot of bikes, but this bike has quite a small fuel tank, and it goes through that tank quite quickly. So it's always prudent to check. Right, so we're just going to go down here and then, whoopsie, round the roundabout. Round the airport roundabout, and then back up Sunset Road, back to Canggu. Where is my turning? Can we shoot through here? Yes. Whoops. Okay. I guess we're all turning off. All right. Lots of people going to the airport today. Come on, let's get a move on. Come on. Well, it looks like my speedo is still a little bit erratic. It's on 0 right now. Excuse me. These cars are so aggressive. Come on, let's get round the roundabout. Come on. You can do it. Well, this is my Royal Enfield Continental GT 650. It's a 650cc parallel twin. This is a 2021 model. I bought this about a year ago, and it is my 7th bike. Not one that I ride every day, but I do ride it fairly frequently. Can we get around these guys? I'll talk a little bit about why I bought this bike, and what I like about it, what I don't like about it. So the two bikes that I bought before this kind of tell the story, really. The 5th bike that I bought was also a Royal Enfield. I bought a Royal Enfield Classic 350. That's a single cylinder 350cc. And I bought that probably about 3 years ago. I bought it brand new, and it's this beautiful sort of turquoise green color. Looks fantastic. It's a very, very gentle bike to ride. It's just got this kind of like, almost like it just sort of moves on autopilot, sort of very easy to ride, very gentle. It's never going to surprise you. So it's perfect for sort of day-to-day going around Canggu, which is like a little village with quite heavy traffic. Great for sort of filtering between traffic. Great for slow moving patches. And yeah, I would say that is my that's my sort of like daily rider. It's just perfect for kind of getting from A to B. It's really comfortable for a passenger as well. It's got like these nice plush seats. And I've even taken that bike on long distance rides. I've even driven it. The last time I did a long distance ride, I drove it for about 2.5 hours straight. I think it was like 100 and something kilometers. And you know, it's a great all-rounder, but it's just not particularly fast. It's not made for that. It's never going to sort of like excite you. It was not really made for that. So whilst that bike is so good at a lot of different things, I just wanted something with a bit more poke, something that, you know, is a bit more reminiscent of the bikes that I did my license on, which were all 650cc's. And, you know, they're a bit more capable, a bit more sort of like fun to ride, good for long distances. You know, I'm always sort of like, I'm basically always in shopping mode for motorcycles. And online, there was this Kawasaki Versys 650 that sort of popped up, became available. And the price was good, low mileage. And from everything that I had read about that bike, and I've ridden a 650 Versys before. I'm actually quite familiar with that platform. I've ridden it all around northern Thailand. And yeah, I was familiar with it. I thought, okay, that could be a good option. So I bought one of those. Again, price is good. The mileage was low. Came with panniers. And that scratched that itch for a while. So that's quite a fast bike. It's pretty nippy. It's the Kawasaki Ninja 650 engine. It puts out about 65 horsepower or something. So, you know, it's a sport touring bike. You can blast up the highway on that thing. You can do some curvy roads with it. It's quite capable of doing anything sporty you might want to throw at it. It's good for 2 people. It's got luggage space. But it's also a little bit characterless, I would say. I've always heard people describe the Versys as it's a motorcycle that you buy with your head, not your heart. And I think that makes a lot of sense. It's a very good sort of all-rounder, capable sport tourer. It's not particularly sexy. It doesn't have very much character, but it will do everything that you need it to do. So it's a very good bike for the money. It's also really good value. And that can be said for it anywhere in the world. I think anywhere in the world you can buy them quite affordably. That's the Kawasaki Versys 650. My one's an older one. It's a 2013 model. Not quite as sexy looking as the newer ones. But I still think it's a good looking bike. It's all in white. Got these silver panniers on the side. The problem with that bike is, as I said, it's a little bit characterless. It's not meant to have character. It's meant to be a quiet, smooth, parallel twin that just goes and then, you know, you're at 70 kilometers an hour. I just had a bit of an itch for something with a bit more character and a bit more power than my 350 single-cylinder Royal Enfield. Probably means I would buy a Triumph. I would buy a Triumph 900cc. Yeah, in an ideal world, I would buy a Triumph 900cc parallel twin, 270 crank, because I've driven a couple of those before, and they honestly are very sexy to ride, loads of character, decent amount of power, and they just sound amazing. It's something about the twin engine with the 270 crank. That's the key. The 270 crank just sounds like a classic bike. It sounds Triumph-y. But the problem is, Triumphs are very, very expensive in this part of the world. So in Bali, for example, if I want to buy a new Triumph, okay, how much would they cost in the rest of the world? If you're in the US, I think a new like a Bonneville 900 is probably around 15,000 US dollars, something like that, maybe a bit less. In Bali, that bike would cost double that easily. So the thing to know about motorcycles in Indonesia is everything up to 250 cc's is sort of fairly normally priced, as in the price you pay is pretty much what you'd pay in the rest of the world, or maybe even a little bit cheaper. Once you get past 250 cc's, you start to pay all these crazy different taxes. There are all these like layers of taxes on top of each other. One of those taxes is, I guess it's sort of like a big bike tax, luxury tax. There'll be an import tax because all of those bikes are imported, as opposed to the smaller bikes are often made in Indonesia. That's why any sort of interesting big bike in Indonesia ends up costing double what it would in the rest of the world, which kind of sucks. Having a look around, what other bikes have classic styling, but also have a parallel twin with a 270 crank, would lead me back to Royal Enfield, because Royal Enfield does these 650cc engines, parallel twins, with a 270 crank. Although now they've started to put them in a lot more different configurations. Originally, it came in two configurations. One was the bike that I'm on, which is the Continental GT 650, and the other one is the Interceptor 650. They're both essentially identical bikes, except for the fact that the Interceptor is a bit more of a upright riding position, a bit more of a sort of traditional classic bike, whereas this bike, the Continental, is more of a cafe racer with the clip-on handlebars and sort of slightly more aggressive geometry. You'll sort of lean forward a bit more, but to be honest, not that much. It's not that aggressive. And one came up for sale online, and I was like, all right, let's try one of those. Overall, I'm very, very happy with it. It certainly scratches that parallel twin 270 crank itch that I had, which is, you know, I want to hear this sound when I rev. This is like by far the best sounding bike that I own currently. And, you know, it's got these like two big exhausts that pop out the back, and this one's not obnoxiously loud because I've still got the baffles in. So it's not really annoying anyone, but it still sounds good. And I like that. That's a good combo. So yeah, overall very happy with this bike. Scratches the itch. It fits the purpose that I bought it for. Come on, let's get away from the lights. And yeah, a few sort of like, it's had a few issues here and there. What have I brought it in for? Okay, you can see it's still a little bit erratic, but to be honest, my old instrument cluster was like that too. To me, that's acceptable. That's character. As long as it sort of half works, it's okay by me. And as long as I've got a fuel gauge. There you go, it's sort of settled a bit. No, anyway. So I've lived with this bike now for, I guess, a year. And like I said, it's not my everyday bike, but there are some days where, you know, it'll get taken out multiple days in a row. It's certainly my Friday evening bike. It's sort of like the bike that I take out when I want to look cool. Okay, so things that I like and things that I don't like. Things that I like, obviously, this is a really good looking bike. It's got that sort of British cafe racer look. The tank is all chrome, which honestly looks really awesome. This bike gets a lot of compliments, gets a lot of like, you know, people turning their head to take a look at it, which is nice. Sounds amazing. It's got some power. I wouldn't say it's powerful. This is a 650cc, but it's only got 40 something horsepower. So it doesn't go very fast, nor does it really accelerate very fast because it's also quite heavy. But it's got enough power to overtake. It's got enough power to cruise for a bit down the highway. But it's very torquey. It's got lots of low down torque. So that's really good for a place like Bali where there's often, you know, bottlenecks of traffic that slow down and then you just got to chug along for a while. This bike and the Classic 350 as well are both excellent for that. You can just sit in first gear and let out the clutch, you know, halfway, and it will just chug along through traffic. I want to turn left here. And we're in. And it will just chug through traffic. I think it's ideal. It's a good one for Bali because of that. It also doesn't get very hot. So one thing that you definitely have to be mindful of if you're going to buy a bigger bike anywhere in Southeast Asia really, is that a lot of these European bikes, they're not made for 30-degree weather. They're not made for sitting in traffic. So, you know, if you buy like a Ducati or something, those bikes run much hotter than a bike like this. And if you just sort of get caught in some slow-moving traffic that you can't filter through, or you get stuck at a light for too long, you end up roasting your balls off. Is a Royal Enfield. It's been made in India. It's sort of made for those conditions by default. So it doesn't really get that hot. And the value, I mean, like, even this bike, I had to pay double the price of the RRP in the USA or in England. That's just how things go in Bali. But it's a very affordable bike in the rest of the world. So double a price that's affordable is still affordable. Okay, let's talk about the things I don't like. First thing, it is quite heavy. So it's as heavy as a Triumph or as heavy as a sort of mid-size adventure bike in a much, much smaller package. So to sort of like move it around a car park, it's not sort of the most nimble thing. It also has a ridiculously pathetic turning circle. The handlebars hardly move left and right, meaning that if you ever need to do like a 3-point turn in a car park, it ends up becoming like a 6-point turn. But that's just annoying. It's not a deal breaker or anything like that. Other things I don't like, the fuel tank is pretty small on this bike. I mean, you can see how slim it is between my legs. I can't remember how many liters it is, but I feel like I'm having to top up with fuel all the time. So that's a bit annoying. What else don't I like? I mean, for the most part, I think it's a great bike. I'm just nitpicking stuff. It's not great for having a passenger on. The seat is quite small, to be honest. But it's not really that kind of bike. It's a cafe racer. You're supposed to race from one cafe to the other on a Saturday afternoon, and that's kind of the purpose of this bike. Now, the government around here have been recently installing these pavements, as you can see. It's a new pavement on the left, new pavement on the right, which is nice and everything, but it does mean that the road itself is much more narrow than what it used to be. So now if you try and fit 2 cars down this road, they can't frickin' fit. Or it's such a close call that they all end up slowing down, which then slows down the flow of traffic. So that's kind of annoying. Let's just take a drive through the famous Canggu shortcut. if any of you are unfamiliar with Canggu, you can see one of our most famous landmarks. Canggu Shortcut is this road that connects kind of two popular areas, and it's the only way to get between those two areas, unless you want to make a massive detour. So it's an extremely highly trafficked road, as you can see. And for some people, this is a road that they'll have to take multiple times a day back and forth. But it's a sort of a daily essential for a lot of people in Canggu, from, people from all walks of life, from local workers to Indonesian tourists, to foreign tourists, to foreign residents, to motorcycles, to cars, as you can see. And what's interesting is that it used to be just a sort of cobblestone road through a rice field. And it was actually quite beautiful and peaceful to ride on at one point, albeit somewhat dangerous because you could fall into the rice field. Now, it has not only been properly paved over, but it is also lined with shops. None of these shops on my left and right, none of these shops were here 2 years ago. It's all been commercially developed. This used to just be a cobblestone path with rice fields on my left and right. So yeah, it's a local landmark, local sort of like shortcut that people take daily. But it's also kind of like a symbol of the relentless change that this part of Bali is always going through. It's the first, I would say it's the most prominent example of Bali kind of selling its soul. So it's a bittersweet kind of, it's like, do we think this is a good thing or a bad thing? It's hard to say, because it's good that there's all these businesses, and then these businesses employ people, and it's creating jobs, and it's raising the sort of GDP of the area, but it's also sad that you lose a bit of the soul. And this is becoming a common thing now. It's sort of like a joke between residents as to, if you see a rice field in Canggu, it's like, how long is that going to last, or how long more is that going to last? The answer is not very long, because the land here is too valuable now. There's lots of investors who want to buy the land and turn it into shops or turn it into villas. So it's very rare to see expanses of rice field now. Or if you do, it means that it will imminently be purchased, or has already been purchased and is just awaiting the development to start. Well, and on that depressing note, I shall sign off and bid you a good day, and I hope you've enjoyed this little trip. And I shall try to be doing a few more of these whenever there's something notable to do, such as, I see you. I don't know if it's interesting to you, but it's always interesting to me to go out into, Canggu roads, Bali roads, and just experience the chaos.